Today's episode is brought to you by 9centprinting.com. With over 100 five-star reviews, 9centprinting.com is ready to meet all your printing needs. Are you a church plant or small church with no copy machine? No problem. 9cent Printing has you covered. If you need bulletins, flyers, books, cards, offering envelopes, posters, they do it all. I know the Christian owners of this business personally, and I'm not just a fan, I'm also a customer. Fast, nationwide shipping, affordable, professional, wow printing at wow prices. Check them out at 9centprinting.com. Welcome to the Small Town Pastor Podcast. This podcast is a ministry of Small Town Network. We exist to make disciples, train pastors, and plant churches in smaller communities. My name is Eric Nielsen. I'm joined today by my faithful co-host, Tony Colomb. How's it going, Tony?
Great. Feeling very festive. I don't know if it's just the fact that it's Christmas or it's our guest sweater.
It might be our guest sweater. We're joined today by a man I just met on the screen, Kyle. Kyle, how do you pronounce your last name?
Yeah, it's pronounced Bueermann.
Bueermann. Okay.
Yep.
Glad to have you on today.
Yeah, thank you.
So for our listeners, which measure in the tens of people, we ran across Kyle on the Lifeway newsletter, where he wrote an article that we're going to talk about in our next episode, called "What is a Rural Church?" And so, being me, I just Googled him and found an email contact and said, "Hey, would you come on my podcast?" I had low expectations, and he said yes. So, pleasant surprise. Thanks for taking the invite. And we're going to kind of do our normal format. We like our guests to just tell us their story, tell us their testimony. How did you become a disciple of Jesus? What led you into ministry, kind of your ministry pathway? We'll do a very conversational tone, just kind of bat the ball around together. So why don't you just tell us first, maybe just tell us who you are, your family, where you live, that kind of stuff. And we'll kind of get into your story.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. My name is Kyle Bueermann. I serve as a rural specialist with the North American Mission Board, which is the church planting and revitalization arm of the Southern Baptist Convention. I've worked full-time for them for the last 4.5 years, and a few years kind of in a part-time role before that when I was pastoring. Married to Michelle. We in 26 we will celebrate 22 years of marriage, and we have 2 kids, Noah and Haley. Our son is a senior, our daughter is a junior in high school. So these are some really exciting, really fun, really busy days, as you can imagine.
Sure.
And so I grew up in a little town called Tahoka, Texas. Tahoka. Yeah, wow. It's a town of about 2,000 people.
Okay.
My dad was a cotton farmer, and worked for he got into that, worked for my mom's dad, my granddad, who was also a cotton farmer, whose parents were cotton farmers. That was just our family.
Okay.
So I grew up in town, as we said, but was a farm kid. And I just thought that was normal. I thought everybody spent, their Saturdays going out to the cotton farm with their dad, because that was what we did, right?
Yeah.
Dad was a cotton farmer. My mom was a stay-at-home mom when we were kids, and really, they weren't involved in ministry, but we were very active in church. My dad. For the Southern Baptist listeners, my dad was my RA leader, a Royal Ambassadors leader back in the day, which is kind of the Baptist Boy Scouts, I guess is a good way to put that.
Baptist Boy Scout. I've never heard of that.
Okay. Dad was our Sunday school superintendent at the church for a while. My mom was real active, and so we were at church, Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday nights. And I became a follower of Christ at 6 years old.
Wow.
As much as a 6-year-old could understand, that what sin was, right? Oh, do you disobey your mom and dad? Well, yep, I do. So,
sinner.
Like I said, as much as a 6-year-old could understand that, came to faith in Christ, was baptized. And then just kind of, I was a kid, right? Just, going to church and knew that I was a believer, but didn't know exactly what all that meant. Really probably until I was 12 or 13, when the idea of understanding what it meant to have Christ as Lord really clicked. And then I guess from that moment, I felt called to ministry. I fought that for a while.
Was that like
which
part
is,
of like something that happened? Like, were you like part of youth group and stuff like that?
yeah, it was a part of a youth ministry. I actually think that was during like a revival that our church held, if I
Okay.
remember correctly.
Okay.
Um,
Like the
and
kind
like I
of thing,
said,
like where they like inviting people, like if you have a decision to make for ministry, that kind of thing.
yeah, like the
Okay.
altar call type thing. Yeah.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah.
And like I said, it was never a question of, whether or not I was a believer, but it was definitely a call to, I would say, something deeper
Mhm.
in a closer relationship with Christ.
So like 13 years old.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's
And
funny,
again,
man,
I mean,
how many times like I hear that, just to sorry to interrupt, but like that for me it was like 14. And
yeah,
I was just talking to a couple different guys this week having this kind of similar conversation. And they were like 13, 14 years old. They got this
yeah,
like this notion. It wasn't like defined, right? But like,
right.
yeah, so I'm sorry. So
But yeah, something clicks, right?
yeah.
Something at that, whether it's, emotional development, intellectual development, something,
Mhm.
there's an understanding that happens, I think, at that point that you just don't have 6, 7, 8 years old, right? And yeah, I mean, I think, as you said, that's not an uncommon thing that the Lord seems to move in young teenagers' lives
Absolutely.
right around then. Um, and like I said, I think from that moment on, I knew I was called to ministry, and in a weird way, I kind of fought against that, which is funny because I didn't know what else I wanted to do. Like, I mean, I didn't really have a career path in mind. Um, I knew I was called to ministry, and to be honest, like, I don't know, working at the church just seemed boring to me as like an early teen. I was like,
There are
that seems
days.
like the worst. Well, yeah,
Yeah.
but I mean, it seemed like the worst idea. And so I guess I surrendered to the ministry. What the language we use for that, I guess, at around 16. Um,
Mhm.
and I mean, it was funny because I knew from that moment, like I knew the college I wanted to go to, knew the degree I wanted to get, knew. And at 16, like I surrendered to at that moment. I used the language. Oh, I'm surrendering to the youth ministry because that was the only thing that I was interested in doing.
Sure.
And so got my bachelor's of religious education from Wayland Baptist University, with a specialization in youth ministry and a minor in music because I just assumed I would be a youth minister
Plays
and
guitar.
music
Yeah.
guy, yeah,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
and music minister. Like I wanted to be the 60-year-old youth minister,
Right. Right.
like break my hip playing dodgeball. Like that seemed like the best life, right?
That's what
Yeah.
everybody
Um,
says when they go into
yeah,
youth
That
ministry.
is my youth minister. Like my youth
yeah,
minister growing up is that guy, gray hair in youth ministry.
yeah.
Just yeah, it's amazing.
And so graduated from college. Met my wife while we were in college. We got married in the summer of '04, in between our junior and senior years of college. Um, and graduated in the spring of '05, and then yeah, got our first youth ministry position, youth and music ministry, and um, kind of bounced around West Texas in a few different churches doing that for 7 or 8 years. And then I was in a really really difficult church,
Mm.
and it was through that experience and watching our pastor take some shots,
Mm.
um, and me taking some shots as the youth and music guy, um, that God began to call me into. Felt the call to pastor, to move into the lead, senior, whatever you want to call that role, right? Um, and again, like I was really thoroughly uninterested in that because I'd seen
Yeah.
the kind of scrutiny,
Right.
the kind of unfair criticism, and I said I don't want any part of that. Like if,
Mm.
I can preach decently enough.
Mhm.
I love discipling folks. If I could do that, like let's do it. But I'm completely uninterested in the lead pastor, and that feeling, that calling just wouldn't go away.
About
I
how
tried.
old? About how
At,
old were you?
at that point, I was 28 when I started kind of feeling that. Like I
So,
said,
but can I
yeah,
pull you back a little bit? So when you talk about like we're from the Pacific Northwest, I don't know a thing about Texas. So bouncing around West Texas, is West Texas like are those smaller communities that you were working in and
yeah.
churches?
Yeah,
So
these were all small rural communities. Yeah.
like the community that you grew up in?
Similar to them. Yeah. I mean, every community kind of has its own culture and its own,
Mm.
every community has its own personality, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So certainly not the same, but yeah, similar. I mean, small,
Small,
rural,
rural.
farming, ranching. Spent some time in a community that was in the middle of the oil patch, which was different.
Mm.
But yeah, I mean,
So
just trying to figure out the Lord's calling on our life, and and having to deal with our own, like, I guess, restlessness, being a place for a couple of years and then saying, all right, we're bored, we're ready to move on.
Yeah.
And some maturing that happened through those. And I can't say I regret any of the moves, but I can look back 15, 20 years later now and go, yeah, we probably pulled out there a little bit too soon.
yeah,
And
well, that's
ended
fair.
up
I think
with,
when we're
check
young, man, when we're young, that's kind of what we
took
do, like everybody's
yeah,
kind of trying to find themselves and
yeah,
so with that being said, you kind of started off in a small church or small town, small church,
yeah.
small town, then bounced around. And before we get into that senior ministry story, are all these churches like Southern Baptist churches? You've been like
Yeah,
in the
yeah,
Southern Baptist
that's
church
been
the whole
my
time?
yeah, yeah, that's my whole life.
So I'm really curious about that, and I don't want to gloss over that. We're not Southern Baptist guys, so I don't know a lot about the
Yeah.
Southern Baptist church. Is there like a strong like Southern Baptist culture that kind of was like a thread that ran through all those churches, or are they all like uniquely different, even though they're a part of the same denomination?
Mm.
Yeah, so in the every Southern Baptist church is autonomous. All right. So
Okay.
there's no like hierarchical structure from the Southern Baptists saying this is what you have to be, right?
Okay.
Okay.
We the churches voluntarily cooperate together through
Mm.
typically local associations, state conventions, and then the national entity.
Okay.
And
Gotcha.
so, like moving from church to church, like I mean, every church is free to call their own pastors, youth ministers, whatever
Okay.
staff they want. Um, it's not like the Methodists that are sending
Right.
pastors somewhere every couple of years. Yeah, we were just, like I said, we were just kind of restless and and bouncing
Yeah.
around. And like I said, I mean, my entire life has been involved in Southern Baptist churches. That's my tribe.
But and there's like
And
an alignment of like core theology and those sorts of
yeah,
things.
for the most part, yeah,
Yeah.
big issues for sure. Yeah.
Sure. Right. Right.
And yeah, so out here, like in West Texas, in the small towns, typically, I mean, you're gonna have a Baptist church or two, maybe an independent fundamental Baptist church,
Hmm.
typically a couple of Pentecostal, various strains of Pentecostal, a Methodist church, Church of Christ is a pretty big deal out here, and then of course Catholic is a
I
big. So I
forgot
like
Church of Christ is big in Texas. That it's
very
kind of
big.
like
Yeah,
our background, our family of churches, like the Restoration churches. Church of
okay,
Christ is kind of our
Yep.
right-leaning, ultra conservative, and Disciples
yeah.
is like our redheaded stepchild we don't talk about. And then we're like the middle, like the independent Christian churches. So
Okay,
so
yeah,
okay, so that's interesting. So you bounce around, you kind of get
yeah,
to a rough situation with you. It sounded like you and your senior pastor both were kind of taking it.
yeah. And I'm not exactly sure why. So the first
Hmm.
6 months that we were there, I mean, it was the like the stereotypical honeymoon. I mean, everything was great.
Hmm.
I came about 3 months after him. And like I said, the first 6 months we were there, man, everything was great. I mean, we were reaching people. We were seeing young families come into the church. Attendance was, I mean, just went like through the roof, at least for this small church. And
Right.
everything seemed to be going right. And then like it was like 6 months almost to the day. It was really weird. Like
Hmm.
everything shifted. And from then on, I mean, it was just that there were power struggles and just like unfair accusations, nothing immoral, but just unfair criticisms, and just a really tough 2 years
Mm.
after that. And in the middle of that, like, so about a year after we moved there, my dad passed away. So I'm dealing with that personally.
Yeah.
Right. And I kind of laugh. So 2011, I'm a huge baseball fan, huge Texas Rangers baseball fan. Right. So 2011 started, my dad passed away, and it ended with the Rangers absolutely collapsing in epic fashion in the World Series. All right. So that was my 2011.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
not that I'm equating those two things, those two events in my
Right.
life,
Yeah.
but those were the bookend events for that year.
Sure.
And so, coming into 2012, so during that time too, like, that was the only time in our lives that we felt like our family was under some sort of spiritual attack. My kids were real small, 2 and 3 at the time. And like my wife would have these really vivid dreams that something was like trying to attack our kids and was keeping her from getting to them. And then one of the kids would wake up screaming. And like, I remember at one point she said our son woke up and he said like there was a dragon in his room. And as a Southern Baptist, like, I don't really have much of a theological framework for that kind of stuff.
Right.
So
it's a little charismatic for me, son.
That gets out there, and we're like, we don't know how to process this, but like, this is very real. And so all of those things are happening in the same time. And so, like, I just finished with my master's degree, and so I have an MDiv freshly in hand, and I'm thinking, all right, I'm going to be able to find a job. And so I just start sending out dozens of resumes everywhere. I mean, all across Texas. And music minister, youth minister, discipleship, pastor, like whatever, I just need out of here. And for about 6 months, I heard nothing. I mean, I probably sent out 30 resumes and heard absolutely nothing.
Wow.
And, just really got, I mean, as you can imagine, frustrated and, feeling beat up and so finally, and what I kind of joke is an act of desperation, I called a buddy I knew in New Mexico, and I just said, "Man, I gotta get out. Like, if I don't get out of this church, I'm probably getting out of ministry altogether."
Wow.
I can't find anything in Texas, and I don't really have a desire to leave Texas, but I can't find anything. So, what do you have in New Mexico? And he sent me a list of like 30 churches.
Wow.
That were looking, and so I said, all right, I'll send my resume and we'll just see what happens. And a couple of weeks later, I get a call from the executive director there in New Mexico, and he said he had sent my resume to Clayton, New Mexico, which is a town in the far northeast corner, 90 miles from Walmart. All right.
We all have crosses to bear.
Yes, 90 miles from Walmart, and get this, to get to the nearest Walmart, you were either driving to Texas or to Colorado. You had to cross state lines.
Oh, no way.
To get to the Walmart.
That's crazy.
And we knew exactly where it was. My wife grew up for most of her childhood about 80 miles away from this town. And so I kid you not, like I told her, I said, so they sent my resume to Clayton, and y'all, she looked me dead in the eye and she said, no, absolutely not. And I said, don't worry. Like, we've got lots of resumes out, somebody else will call. We're not going to go to Clayton. And a month later, we were interviewing there
in Clayton, New Mexico.
And
so real quick, time out. Cause like people that if you don't know, you don't know like what ministry's like. And I try to tell like Bible college kids and interns all the time, like, you can't say like, I'm going to live in this town and be a pastor. You have to go where the work is.
Yeah.
And especially when you're part of, like you said, a tribe or denomination, like, I might want to live in a certain town, but there may not be a church of our tribe in that town.
Yeah.
And even if there is, they may not want to hire me. They probably have a pastor already. So you kind of have to follow the work. And I remember being in Joplin, Missouri, getting ready to graduate and sending out like literally back. And this is like the pre-internet era, like sending out mailing resumes and getting rejection letters in the mail And by the time I graduated, I'd been doing this for like 3, 4 months. I had not one lead,
Oh
no
man, yeah.
prospects. And not only was I not like just left wondering if I was going to get a call, they sent me letters. I had like everything I applied for, and I did exactly what you said. I applied for worship leader, youth
Yep.
leader, preacher, anything I could, any opening I applied for, right? And I was just crickets, and so, and then like you, just like you said, like, and then one day somebody called and it was like,
Yeah.
okay, here we go. And it wasn't to anywhere I'd ever thought I'd work, right? So,
Yeah.
so New
Yeah.
Mexico, is that where you ended up going then?
Yeah. So that was my first lead pastor job. I was 29 when we moved there.
Wow.
And thought I knew what I was doing. And honestly, I mean, that was a great first church, really was. They were so gracious, and so my wife is 5 days older than me. Okay.
Wow.
And
Wow.
so that meant that, I mean, I was in a room often, 29. I was pastoring a lot of folks that were my grandparents' age, right?
Yeah.
And it was not uncommon for me to be the youngest adult in the room.
Yeah.
And so that was an interesting dynamic, right? Just to learn to love people, learn what it meant to be loved by them, as you're trying to lead, right? And earning trust, and it was a great community to do that.
Right.
I said kind of an isolated community, but just a fun spot. Definitely a farming, ranching community, with some folks that love Jesus and love their community, love their church, and it was so much fun. Like, that's probably when I look back on the pastoring season of my life, those 9 years that I spent serving churches as lead pastor, that's probably my favorite of the two that I got to serve, just because just such a fun community. So, town of 2,000 people, we actually had a movie theater, believe it or not.
Hey, all right.
And not long after we got there, they got this grant like for like $100,000. So they put in like the 3D technology and brand new sound system. And so
That's awesome.
So when the new Star Wars, the last trilogy was released,
yeah.
like, we saw it opening night, and you just walked up to the box office and paid $4 for a ticket and saw it in 3D in our little town of 2,000 people. It was fantastic.
That's amazing.
And
awesome.
And I mean, like I said, this community was pretty tight there. And so, like, the movie theater on a Friday night, it was like going to a local football game, or even had almost the feeling of church on Sunday, because like before the movie, people would be visiting like in the aisles. Right? It was a community event, especially if they were showing anything that was family friendly and kids were there. And I mean, it was just such a fun environment.
That sounds fun.
And so we were there for 3.5 years, and really weren't looking. And then I got a call one day from a trusted friend, and he said, "Hey, there's a church that is in desperate need of a pastor, and this is the situation that they're in. They have about 60 people, and they have $1 million in debt." And
how?
And a sanctuary. So 60 people, $1 million of debt, a sanctuary that seats 600.
What?
That's how they're in $1 million debt. What the heck?
And he goes, "I think you're the guy."
Like, not
Cool.
Not it.
I've been a lead pastor all of 3 years now.
And I'm going, is that a compliment? Like, what are you trying to say here? Like,
have I offended you somehow?
Yeah, that's right. And so, I, like, my initial thought, like a lot of these, were like, nah, man, I don't know. And again, I just couldn't escape that call. And so my wife and I visited, and I think it was her that said, "This is crazy." She said, "This makes no sense whatsoever, but I think this is where we're called." And so, all right, here we go. So moved out of a parsonage, had to buy a house in this community that we were moving to, and it was really, I mean, I said, okay, if we're gonna do this, like we've got to be all in, right? Yeah, like I don't need that escape after a year,
right?
to, hey, our lease is up. Like, now's a good time for us to bounce, right?
Yeah.
So we got there in the spring of 2016, and man, for the next 4 years, we saw the Lord do amazing things. We and so much of it just fell into our laps. Like, we were trying to be active in the community and trying to build some relationships, but the Lord just opened some really cool doors. So we were in Alamogordo, New Mexico, kind of south central New Mexico, which is an Air Force town. Holloman Air Force Base is there.
Right.
And so one of the great things about that is every single week, the United States government was sending young families to our community.
Oh yeah.
And many of them were looking for a church. And we just, and tried to work some of those relationships. And quite frankly, I did some begging over coffee and lunch. Like, look, I know what you saw when you walked in on Sunday mornings. But there's one way that changes. And I said, we would love to have a vibrant children's ministry. We'd love to have these things, but it's going to take children. It's going to take, it's going to take folks to stick around and say, we know that this church doesn't have the programs and stuff as some of the larger churches in town, but this is where we want to be. And lo and behold, some of them stuck around for that. My speech just begging them to stick around, it worked.
Man. Can I hang out on that one for just a minute? Because I think that is just in the connection with the smaller town, the rural communities. That's one of the hardest challenges. Like, we have that issue at our Napa campus, our location out there. And it's an interesting dynamic because it's 3 little communities totaling maybe 4,500 people. In our building, we were given the building from a Lutheran church and to start our service out there. But before that even happened, there was a preschool meeting in this building. And so we've had this built-in preschool with all these families that have been part of this for a long time. So we do VBS out there in the summer. Last night I was out there. We do a once-a-month kid program we call Light Night. We get about 30 kids that are preschool alumni families that come. But we get no children's stuff at church during the service. So the connection from the preschool families to the church service is impossible. And it's kind of one of these situations like you found yourself in. It's like, this doesn't change until families come. Yep. How do we get the families here? How do we get people? So what did you guys do then to try to start to kickstart that children's ministry? Was it getting people lined up in a rotation to serve, or was it getting because I'm trying to self-serving, I'm trying to get that problem solved in that spot right now.
Yeah, it was both. And so, I remember we had a lady that I just asked her if she'd be willing to teach a children's Sunday school class. And I said, let me tell you the honest truth. I said, there may be some Sundays that you're in there and nobody shows up. I said, so be prepared for that.
Yeah.
I said, but I don't want a family to show up and we don't have anybody in that room. I said, so here's what I want you to do. I said, I want you to sit in that room for 20 minutes. Right. So if we start at 9, right, by 9:20, if nobody shows up, that's fine. You can go on down to your class down the hall. But if somebody walks in for the first time, I want us to have somebody in this room.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there were Sundays that was frustrating, but I think, you just make that expectation known ahead of time. Look, you might sit in there for a month and nobody ever shows up, but one Sunday, somebody's going to walk in. And it was amazing. I noticed that after we did that, like, just being prepared, it's amazing how the Lord honors that. Yeah. Right. Just having the people in place, having the faith to say, we're going to do this thing, even though right now we don't, that thing doesn't exist. Right. But we're going to have this thing prepared because we believe the Lord's going to send us some folks.
Right. So what happened?
That class eventually had 3 or 4 kids. It wasn't a huge one, but it eventually had 3 or 4 kids. Our nursery was the amazing thing. Over the course of 4 years, it went from 1 or 2 kids to, I remember one Sunday we had 17 kids in our nursery.
Yeah.
And a nursery worker like walks out and her hair's all frazzled and she kind of has the crazy eyes, right? And she's like, we need more help. And I said, yes, I agree. We're going to get it. But then I also said, remember, this is what we prayed for.
Yeah.
This is what we prayed for so long.
Yeah.
So over the course of 4 years, from 2016 up in, well, I guess 3.5 up until the end of 2019, our church effectively doubled in size from 60 to 120. We were paying our bills for the first time, and taking care of some of the debt that existed. We had launched accidentally launched a recovery ministry. So about 6 months in, we started a Thursday night worship service just because we realized, okay, we live in an Air Force community. Like there's people that are working on the weekends just by nature of their job on the Air Force. So if we do like a Thursday night service, let's just try it and see what happens. And the second week of that, this van pulls up from a recovery house in town with like 20 ladies that are in this kind of halfway house. They're in there probably instead of being in jail, while they're trying to get their life back on track from drugs or alcohol or something like that. And so I was like, oh yeah, that's cool. And so then the third week they showed up again, and that was our primary gathering, congregation, people that showed up on this Thursday night service. And so I went, I think we have a recovery ministry, which means we need to pivot the way that we do this service a little bit.
Yeah.
And
right.
so yeah, that was in I think that would have been in the spring of 2016, and we ran that Thursday night service for about 18 months, and then they ended up coming to our Wednesday night, which was great. Took a night off of our plate, and kept that up, and that ran right up until COVID, which is really kind of when everything fell apart, as you can imagine. So I mean, like I said, up until at the end of 2019, we had doubled our attendance. We were making some big plans for what ministry was going to look like in 2020. Had some evangelism stuff planned. We were going to go out and do some door-to-door stuff in like March of 2020. Like once it started kind of warming up, we're like, all right, we're going to go out on Wednesday nights. We're going to do some door-to-door. We're just going to see what happens. And like the week we were supposed to start that is when everything shut down. And door-to-door ministry wasn't going to work. In fact, we might have been arrested. I don't know. New Mexico was pretty strict.
Oh, right.
On that.
Sure.
And
we're from Oregon, so we get it. I was in.
Oh yeah.
We both started COVID in Oregon, and
yeah. So we were closed in 2020 for about 8 weeks, I think it was. I think for a lot of the guys that ministered through COVID, like the first 2 weeks were kind of new and exciting. Like, oh man, we got to figure this thing out, right? This is a fun problem solving thing. But then I remember walking into the sanctuary on Easter Sunday, and there were 7 of us in the room.
Oh man.
Our worship leader, her husband, myself, my wife, and our 3 kids total.
That was it.
Their daughter, our 2 kids. And
we weren't even open on Easter.
Yeah, we had a 5-person mass gathering limit. So what we do is we sent all the kids to the balcony. We said, all right, y'all go up there. Yeah. And there were 4 of us that were down on the floor. I would run the slides on the live stream while our worship leader and her husband were leading worship. And then I'd play like a bumper video and we'd switch places, and she'd sit at the board and run the slides while I was doing the sermon. And man, I remember Easter Sunday, like just feeling like this punch in the gut, right? Like, man, this is not how things are supposed to go.
Yeah. And
so when we reopened Memorial Day weekend that year, I mean, I get up, we're I forget what the restrictions were, like half capacity or something. Like I said, we have a room that seats 600. So I'm like, hey, we were running like 115 or so before. Wow. Like, we've got room. It's fine. We blocked off every other pew. We're like, all right, we're going to get folks to spread out. And so I get up that morning and I'm making coffee at the church. I'm unlocking doors. I'm so excited. And we had 40 people that showed up. And all through the summer, like we'd see a bump up to about 70, and then the next week we'd be like 35.
Yeah.
And it just felt like we were right back at the beginning.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, I mean, to be completely honest, like at the end of 2020, I remember looking at my wife and saying, I don't think I have the energy to start all over where we were 5 years ago.
Wow.
I said, we worked so hard. We saw so many good things happen.
Yeah.
And so I heard somebody describe 2020 as that it's like looking both ways before you cross the street, and then you get hit by an airplane. Like it's completely out of nowhere, right? Like we did everything we were supposed to do, and it just felt like the rug had been pulled out from underneath us, right?
That's horrible.
And even in that, I mean, in 2020 we were able to pay off some of our debt. We sold some property. Like there were still good things happening.
Yeah.
But and again, I told her, I said, I'm not sending resumes out. But if the Lord sees fit to send something, I think I'm ready. I think I'm ready for something else.
And so is that when you transitioned to the North American Mission Board?
At the end of 2020, I'd worked for them part-time. I started that's a story I'll share in just a minute about how I got connected with them. So I've been working part-time for them for a couple of years. And then I think it was around Thanksgiving of 2020, I got a call asking if I would be willing to come on full-time
For the North American.
And it was right. Yeah. And it was right about that same time that I was just kind of like, man, I don't, without like a 3-month sabbatical or something, like I don't know that I can, that I can start all over with this. I just don't know. I'm in a place emotionally, physically, spiritually to do that. And so, I got a call asking at the end of 2020 if I would be open to taking the role that I have now. And, wife and I discussed it, prayed about it, and said, yeah, we would. So that took some time, but we ended up coming on full time in May of 21.
Well, let's stop you right there, because we're about at the end of our time for this first episode. Why don't we wrap this up, and then when we come back, we'll just start right there, how you took that job, what that job is, and get into some of the stuff we read in your article about rural churches. So let me go ahead and close this out. And thanks for joining us, Kyle. Appreciate that. For our listeners, be sure and check out our sponsors at 9centprinting.com. If you like what we're doing, please like or subscribe wherever you watch or listen. And if you're interested in Small Town Network, you can find us online at smalltownnetwork.com. If you believe in the importance of planting disciple-making churches in smaller communities, we'd love you to consider partnering with us in prayer and or financial support. You've been listening to the Small Town Pastor Podcast.
Today's episode is brought to you by 9centprinting.com. With over 100 5-star reviews, 9centprinting.com is ready to meet all your printing needs. Are you a church plant or small church with no copy machine? No problem. 9cent Printing has you covered. If you need bulletins, flyers, books, cards, offering envelopes, posters, they do it all. I know the Christian owners of this business personally, and I'm not just a fan, I'm also a customer. Fast, nationwide shipping, affordable, professional, wow printing at wow prices. Check them out at 9centprinting.com.